Hey everyone! Today we are back to looking at Kent Hovind's book in which he thinks science textbooks are brainwashing children. He doesn't really understand evolution. He thinks science textbooks are all lying to us and turning the kids against God and blah blah blah. It's a very exhausting book. If you haven't seen the other videos in this series, I recommend you go watch them just for funsies. The first one is kind of just like an overview of the book and Kent's position and his history and background and education or lack thereof it. The next ones are more kind of science-based and heavy and debunking what he assumes are the lies in textbooks. I am very conscious of trying not to repeat myself too much in these videos. There are certain few things that he does kind of like touch on again and again. I'm trying not to repeat myself, so if there's something you think I haven't covered, there's a chance it's in the other videos if you haven't seen them, or there's a chance I'm going to get to it in more depth in later videos. We'll just figure it out as we go along. Honestly though, the longer I spend reading this book, the sadder I get. Without too much rambling for once, we're going to just try and jump into this. The next lie we are going to look at is a thorough misunderstanding on his part of both fossils and the tree of life diagrams that we often see in textbooks and museums and all of the internet and those kinds of places. He writes that even if fossils are found in a particular order, and they are not, this would not prove any relationship. For example, if I get buried on top of a hamster, does this prove he is my grandfather? It obviously does not. So first up, that is not how we age fossils, just by what was found buried on top of the other. And that's not how we figure out relationships between them. This is one of the most absurd straw men I've ever seen. Kent throws out a lot of these, but this is probably one of the weirdest ones. And also one of the weirdest analogies as well, with the hamster thing. But seriously, where do I even start with this? I mean, for starters, the purpose of tree of life diagrams themselves are not to act as evidence or be taken as evidence. They're more of just a depiction of the conclusions we've already come to. They depict all the information we've learnt from evidence, and they show what we've concluded from it, which is how all these organisms are related. It's not evidence itself, it's just a teaching tool to show what we learnt from the evidence. It doesn't say fossils were found in this order or anything like that. It doesn't claim to be evidence itself, it's simply a depiction of the conclusions we draw from evidence. To talk about fossils specifically for a moment, fossils are simply the preserved remains of living organisms from the past. To put it very, very simply, there are different kinds of fossils, there are different ways fossilization can occur. I'm not going to go into too much detail right now, but I'll leave some links and some book recommendations below in the description if you want to find out more about it. Very interesting stuff. One of the big things that I don't think Kent Hovind understands, and what people like him don't understand, is how we can take evidence from things like fossils and use them to understand what life used to be like and how life evolved. They seem to think that we can only understand what life is like by observing it in the present. They think we can only understand what life is like now by observing what happens. They think we can only understand how a plant grows by observing it in front of us. But the truth is, as with all science, we don't just need present-day observations. We can extrapolate data back by understanding patterns and rules and how things happen. And like I say, looking back and saying, okay, well, this is how things work now. If we take these patterns and this understanding and these rules, then we can say, okay, well, this is probably how it happened in the past, and work backwards. Ken Ham is the same with his constant chance of, were you there? And it's just a little bit silly and naive and ridiculous and short-sighted, to be honest. There seems to be this weird idea that science needs current observations of things like evolution or fossilization to be happening in front of you before we can know for sure that it happened or whatever. But we can actually use observations combined with our knowledge of how certain processes work and extrapolate back, like I keep saying, to figure out the most likely way something happened. If we could only rely on the things we'd seen in front of our eyes, then the criminal justice system wouldn't be a thing, really. It wouldn't work at all. No one would ever be prosecuted, or very few people would ever be prosecuted. Whereas in reality, we know that the criminal justice system and the evidence-based system there does work. Eyewitnesses are unreliable at the best of times. What does work is using the solid evidence to figure out what happened. For example, DNA analysis, fingerprints, blood splatter analysis, all these kind of things. We look at this evidence in the current state it's at, and we use our understanding of how it got there and the patterns we've seen in the past and all sorts to extrapolate back and say, well, based on what we can see now, and based on these scientific tests we've done, we can say that the most likely scenario was this. We do that at crime scenes every day, and we do the same thing with fossils, for example, and other kind of like geological evidence like that, but we're just kind of extrapolating back a little bit further or a lot further. But it's the same essential methodology, if that makes sense. It's the same way of collecting information and using that to piece together what was the most likely chain of events. There's this great book called Introduction to Paleobiology and the Fossil Record, which has a few really interesting bits about this. I'm just going to read you a few quotes from it. Science is supposed to be about reality, about hard facts, calculations, and proof. It's obvious that you cannot take a time machine back 20,000 years and see the mammoths and saber-tooths for yourself. So how can we ever claim there's a scientific method in paleontological reconstruction? That is hard to say. Sir Francis Bacon argued that it was only through the patient accumulation of accurate observations of natural phenomena that the explanation would emerge. The inquiry might hope to see common patterns among the observations, and those common patterns would point to an explanation or law of nature. Meanwhile, Karl Popper explained that the way science works as a hypothetical co-deductive method, big word, he argued that in most of the natural sciences, proof is impossible. What scientists do is set up hypotheses, statements about what may or may not be the case. So what most natural scientists do is called hypothesis testing. They seek to refute or disprove hypotheses rather than prove them. There are facts and speculations. The fossil is 6 inches long is a fact. It is a leaf of an ancient fern is a speculation. But perhaps the word speculation is the problem, because speculation is constrained within the hypothetico-deductive framework. Perhaps informed deduction would be a better way of describing what most scientists do. Reconstructing the bodily appearance and behavior of an extinct animal is identical to any other normal activity in science, such as reconstructing the atmosphere of Saturn. The sequence of observation and conjectures that stand between the bones of the Brachiosaurus lying in the ground and its reconstructed moving image in a movie is identical to the sequence of observations and conjectures that lie between biochemical and crystallographical observations of chromosomes and the creation of the model of the structure of DNA. So basically, by observing fossils, dating them, understanding where they're found, we can start to draw likely conclusions about which animals lived where and when, what they looked like, what they ate, how they behaved, who they lived with, and so on. It's not just making stuff up, but it's using the knowledge we know and can verify and combining that with the observations we make, the patterns, the laws, the rules that we understand about today and can see today, and extrapolating back and saying this is the most likely explanation for this stuff that we found, and this is what it can tell us about the past. Basically what I'm saying is there's a hell of a lot more to it than just this fossil was buried below this fossil, and therefore family. I don't know what that weird accent was. Family words. I find it really hard to speak today. I've got this weird, like, kind of gum infection. It's not pleasant. It's healing up nicely now, but I'm taking painkillers for it, as well as using this, like, antibacterial mouthwash. It kind of makes my mouth a little bit numb. I'm finding it a little bit hard to speak, so bear with me in this video, please. In the next lie, Kent Hovind tackles how small cells are complex, which is true. But then he says, some textbooks will try to teach you that just because a creature is smaller, it is therefore simpler. Well, I mean, kind of, yeah. A human is definitely more complex than a single cell, because we're made up of millions of those single cells. So, yeah, you literally can't deny we're more complex than one cell. That's just kind of weird. But that's not saying that because single cells are simpler than complex organisms, they're simple full stop. No, there's still a lot of complex stuff going on there. Really weird one, this. He goes on to say, as you study advanced molecular biology, something which Kent definitely hasn't done at an accredited university. Anyway, as you study advanced molecular biology, you will see that even a small bacteria is more complex than a space shuttle, the most complex machine ever built by man. Ask any computer expert if smaller is simpler or more complex. Don't be deceived into believing that smaller is simpler. I don't get the point he's trying to make here. It's just a basic one, and yeah, I don't think any textbooks are trying to say that cells are like, I don't know, I don't get his point. It's weird. He's just stating obvious things. There's also this kind of like weird appeal to authority here, or at least that's what I think he's trying to go for by talking about, like, when you study advanced molecular, like, he hasn't done that, let's be honest. I have more credentials in this than Kent does, and I'm not an expert by any means, like not even a little bit, because unlike Kent, I actually studied this stuff at an accredited university, which I know is a foreign concept to him, but, you know, it's a university that's actually good. Just a reminder that Kent studied religious education and Christian education at 2 unaccredited universities, whereas I did biomedical science at Warwick, which, when I applied to it, was one of the top universities in the world, and I think it was like number 3 in the UK. So that's what a real university is, Kent. And I'm not saying you can't know this stuff if you haven't been to a university. I'm just saying if he's going to bring in this kind of like appeal to authority, he should at least have the authority and credentials to back it up, and he doesn't. So yeah. Yeah, I think with this point, he's just trying to be like kind of contrary for the sake of it, and I don't really get what point he's trying to make. Skipping forward a little bit, he brings up dinosaurs and birds. I love dinosaurs, but understanding their history in any kind of great detail is not my strongest area. So I'm going to talk about the basics here, and if you want to go find out more, I'm going to leave some really interesting descriptions and further reading in the description below. As always, I'm going to try and pick kind of like nice, simple, straightforward stuff that anyone can read and understand, no matter what your experience or level or like what your prior knowledge is. It's stuff that's accessible for everyone. Anyway, there's some great stuff down there that explains a lot about how we know that dinosaurs and birds are related and so on, and it's really, really interesting. I thoroughly recommend you go read it. But what I want to focus on here are a few of Kent's really bizarre claims. Like he says, it's surprising that modern textbooks teach the ridiculous idea that birds are descendants of dinosaurs. What a silly idea! There are many thousands of anatomical differences between reptiles and birds. Reptiles have 4 perfectly good legs that function just fine. Birds have 2 legs with 2 wings, which also work as fine as they are. Which also work fine as they are. If a reptile were to try and evolve into a bird, at some point you would have a half leg and half wing. Now it can no longer walk or run, yet it cannot fly. This creature is doomed to extinction. I'm just getting to a point here where there's only so many times I can say, but Kent, that's not how evolution works. That's not what evolution is. Where are you getting these ideas from? It's kind of exhausting at this point. Like, do I really have to explain why his weird statements here are so absurd? Like, oh my god. So he goes on, right, to talk about why he doesn't like talking about shared characteristics between birds and reptiles and stuff. For example, saying, in their effort to misinform students, evolutionists often point out that feathers and scales are both made of the same protein, keratin, which is true. They'll tell you this proves feathers evolved from scales. The book will use fancy terms to make it sound official, such as dinosaurs had some avian characteristics. I don't think that's a fancy term, but okay. It's just like a fact. Well, a bicycle has certain automotive characteristics, like a frame and tyres, but this does not prove that bicycles turned into cars over millions of years, except, kinda, yeah, when you think about it, if we're gonna make a comparison like that, you could say that bicycles are a common ancestor of cars and modern bikes as we know them today. Yeah, that's kinda what happened. Yeah, all bikes as we know them today, and motorbikes and cars and trains and lorries and planes can all be traced back to a common ancestor of bikes, and also horses and wheels and so on. I can't remember the point I was trying to make here. Anyway, I'm taking this analogy too far. I don't know enough about cars to make this work in any great amount of detail. Anyway, the point is, Kent claiming that there's no in-between dinosaurs as he pictures them in his head, and birds as we know them today, like, it's odd that he's trying to claim this, because we've literally found missing link species, if you want to call them that. Again, not my area of expertise. I don't know everything in regards to this stuff, but I can name one example. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. I think it's like Archaeopteryx. Basically, this animal with a beak, wings, feathers, but also the claws, teeth, and tail of a reptile. How much more in between do you want to get? Next up, Kent claims that there's so much evidence that the Earth is only a couple of thousand years old instead of billions, as we know it to be. But if you want that, like, totes legit proof that he totally, definitely, super has, you need to shell out like $50 for one of his seminars. So without offering any other explanation other than like, oh, population's growing pretty quick at the moment, he ends this weird little rant about the age of the earth with a quote from Hitler, which is cool, I guess. Whatever. And then he gets mad at the idea of like cavemen, and he doesn't like that. He tries to discredit everything we've ever learned about the history of humanity by referencing like 3 hoaxes, including ones like Piltdown Man, which is like, look, we know it's a hoax, we know it's been debunked, no one uses it as evidence, but one hoax doesn't make all the legit evidence just suddenly like not exist, you know? Then he gets mean about Lucy, which I don't like, because I like Lucy. She looked like a nice little ape person. He calls her nothing more than a 3-foot-tall chimpanzee-type animal, and then tries to sell you another one of his expensive seminars. Of course. In reality, Lucy is a name given to a species of Australopithecus afarensis. Around 40% of her skeleton was found near a village in Ethiopia, which is one of the most complete skeletons we have for a kind of humanoid type animal organism this old. Oh god, words, my brain isn't working today. From this skeleton, which was an amazing, incredible find, we learnt she was around 3.2 million years old. She had a small skull like an ape, but was bipedal and upright, which means she walked on 2 legs upright. This was further confirmed by finding fossilized footprints which fit with the Australopithecus afarensis' skeleton, and like its feet and legs and hip width and leg length and all that kind of stuff, and how it would have walked. And these footprints were radiometrically dated to around 3.2 million years ago as well, or around 3 million years ago, something like that. Basically, this whole find taught us so much, because it showed that in the grand scheme of things, our ancestors were learning to walk upright before our larger, more advanced brains started to evolve, which was a kind of amazing and interesting find. We can tell from looking at her remains and examining them and the observations we've made of them that yes, she did look a lot like a chimpanzee in some respects, but her pelvis and her legs are a lot more similar to modern humans. She's literally this like middle step or missing link that people like Kent Hovind always ask for and claim we've never found, but here she is, and he's just claiming like, oh no, she's just like a kind of monkey-like thing, which is kind of the point, to be honest. Yeah. Just to dismiss such an exciting and informative discovery as nothing more than like a 3-foot chimpanzee type animal shows that Kent doesn't really want the truth. He's willfully remaining ignorant. He's willfully ignoring evidence. He doesn't want to see what's in front of him. He likes his own agenda, and he's going to twist everything to fit with that agenda. That's what we can learn from this. If you want to learn more about Lucy and Australopithecus afarensis, I nearly forgot which one she was then there are some links and stuff in the description below, as with everything I'm talking about here today. Interesting stuff. She's amazing, wonderful, very exciting, very interesting to learn about. Thoroughly recommend you go read some of that stuff. Next up, we are going to end this with some very wise words from Kent Hovind, which I think really show you the kind of person he is. A lie that science textbooks teach us is that no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. He writes that this is not a scientific statement. The author would need to talk to every person who ever lived to know this to be true. The truth is that dinosaurs have always lived with man. They were called dragons for most of human history, and man killed most of them.
To the dragon's lair! Come out and be slayed.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, said William.
Oh, it's not fair. Everybody hates me.
In 1841, a new name, Dinosaur, was given to them. It's quite possible that a few are still alive. And then he goes on to talk about the Loch Ness Monster. I'm not even going to qualify this point with a response. We're just going to leave this here and leave the video right here and move on, because Kent. Sorry this video wasn't quite as like detailed as some of the others. Sorry, I'm not quite with it today. My head's a little bit all over the place. Like I say, toothache, this, oh my god, do you know what it's like to just have like constant pain in your mouth for like, it's been like 3 days now. I'm like, oh, like it's starting to get better. The swelling's going down in my gums, but it's just not pleasant, and I'm a little bit of a grumpy girl. Can't really speak properly, like I say. My brain's not really working properly. I've taken a lot of painkillers to try and stop it hurting so much. It is getting better. If you want to blame anyone, let's blame Dan, because he took the electric toothbrush in the breakup, and my teeth have been suffering from having to use like a manual toothbrush. I don't think I'm used to it, and I think I've not been brushing as well as I should have been, apparently. And now this has happened. So that's a lesson for me to brush a little bit harder, brush a little bit better, maybe floss a little bit more often. So there you go, kids. Look after your teeth, or you're going to end up like this for like 3 painful days. But like I say, I'm using an antibacterial mouthwash now. It's going down. You don't need to know all this about my teeth. Basically, I've always had problems with teeth, and I hate them. This is just another one in a big long list of teeth problems. So there we go. Also, buy an electric toothbrush. It's amazing. Oh, I miss mine so much. Not that we shared a toothbrush. Like, we shared a toothbrush, not toothbrush heads. That would be weird. We had separate heads. Why am I talking so much about this? Okay, anyway, leaving this here. Kent Hovind, let me know what you think about his claims that dinosaur and man lived together. That all the fossils we have about human history are fake and wrong and blah, blah, blah. Let me know what you think about his claims that it's absurd to think that dinosaurs and birds are related in any way. Let me know what you think about his weird claims about cells and his lack of education and, oh, I don't know what. Just let me know your thoughts, please. I'm going to go and rest my mouth and stop talking and probably use some more mouthwash. But yeah, I'm done for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with me when I'm feeling like this. And hopefully I'll see you again soon when I'm feeling a little bit better. Huge thank you to everyone supporting me on Patreon this month, with a special thank you going to Data Jack, Trae Sprowles, Gambit and his chauffeur, Liv's Pantyhose Addiction, Mark Dauner, Christian Berg, Nathalie Romer, Simon Lundh, Jadeon Sheppard, Robert Korte, Peter Kyrouac, Sir Michael Moore, Christina the Atheist, Sage Villarreal and Loren Hart. You guys and everyone supporting me on Patreon are absolutely amazing, and I couldn't do this without you, so thank you so much. And remember, if you are supporting me on Patreon, you can get exclusive access to my Discord server where you can come join in the conversation. So hopefully I'll see you guys over there. And thank you all so much.